There are two types of watch collectors. There's the type that truly wants to buy and wear a watch because they like it, because they enjoy it. And there's also a type of watch collector that places more emphasis and focus on watches that signal status, or perhaps they're in high demand. More of a way to say, look at me, and to fit in a certain hierarchy socially than buy the thing that they're going to wear, love, and enjoy. In this video, I'm going to be talking about why I am still done with Patek Philippe watches. Now, I did a video nearly a year ago on a topic about this, talking about the Patek Philippe brand, the company, and parts of just the whole collecting experience that personally I just don't like and I don't think is going to last long term, considering where people's minds are on how they buy and use goods or services, or even if we want to talk about how people choose to carry out their careers or go to school. So here I'm going to talk about first the new watch, the Cubitus, which is still rumored at this point. It's supposed to be announced actually later today at the time of shooting this video, but a rumored watch to be released from Patek Philippe, a little bit about that, but then I'm going to get into a couple points about the brand that might be good for you if you are more inclined to care about the status symbol aspect of the watches, or it might be bad if you really just want to buy and wear what you enjoy, and maybe you place more emphasis on a brand's willingness to give the collectors more of what they want as opposed to what they want as a brand. So let's talk about this new watch first, the Cubitus, that everyone is talking about online. Now, at this point, while there are some reputable sources that are reporting on it, this Cubitus watch pictured here from Patek Philippe is rumored to be released in the future, and it's not confirmed 100% as of yet at the time of this video, but many collectors are placing a lot of weight on this, that Patek Philippe is going to be announcing this watch. And according to what I've been seeing online, there are no sources online where Patek Philippe is actually rejecting this notion that this new Cubitus watch is going to be coming out. So many collectors are just saying that they don't like the way that this watch looks. Now, personally, I think it looks okay, but not quite in line with what Patek Philippe has historically been. Now, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, but many collectors just say that they don't like the way that it looks. And when it comes down to watches, a lot of what makes a watch is how it looks. People like to look at their wrist and say, oh, wow, that looks cool. We have cell phones. You really don't need to keep time with a watch. So part of it is just looking at something that looks cool on your wrist, in your watch box, so on and so forth. So Patek Philippe has done this in the past, and many people, myself included, have thought that they've kind of watered some of the models down a little bit by veering away from that classic dress watch style, more refined, kind of a high-class look and feel to the watch. Now, myself, I'm not shy to watches that are utility-driven or durable in any sense of the way. I wear many watches mostly because I can beat them up and not have to worry about having a dress watch on my wrist that's not going to be able to jump in the pool or to go swimming or on adventures or anything like that. So myself, I actually am not the biggest fan of these, overtly classy or dressy watches just because of my lifestyle. But that trend continues out there, especially with Americans and in the West, to where more people are dressing up less. They don't need to wear a suit to work. Maybe they work from home. Maybe they can wear athleisure to work. There's less focus on kind of the classic principles, if we want to call them, of this is how you should dress to be professional, this is how you should dress to be successful, and more of a focus now on the individual and what makes sense for them. And so I can understand Patek Philippe kind of wanting to modernize and a little bit acknowledging these trends, but I don't see the same thought process happening with the way that Patek Philippe operates, at least from the customer standpoint. Now, in 2009, Patek Philippe gave up on the Geneva seal. Now, much like you would find with something like a Casca chronometer certification, a third party where the watches meet certain requirements to have a stamp of approval by a third party that's acknowledged as, an industry authority, being separate from the brand to acknowledge, yes, we as a separate third party put our stamp of approval that it meets certain quality or functional requirements. And so Geneva Seal was one of these requirements that had to do predominantly with the movement finishing. We had watch brands and manufacturers like Roger Dubuis, early Roger Dubuis, that would submit their watches as well as Patek Philippe. And this is something that collectors really love. The old ways of doing things where there still was an agreement and consensus outside of the brand themselves that something was made to quality. Now, I'm not saying in any way that Patek Philippe lowered their quality, but what this does exemplify when Patek Philippe gets away from the third-party Geneva Seal in 2009 is this kind of idea or thought of, hey, we're the top dogs in town and we'll tell you if we're quality or not. We don't need to adhere to any kind of guidelines. We'll come up with our own Patek Philippe seal, and the third party, forget about it. We don't need to listen to anyone else. And I personally believe that this mentality follows through in the brand to today, over 10 years later, that you see with the customer experience. Now, if there's any of you out there that have gone into a boutique or authorized dealer and were shopping around for Patek Philippe, how were you treated? Now, there are many people that are top Patek Philippe collectors that say, oh, I'm always treated the best. I get it. That's a different type of collector than probably a lot of the people watching these videos and most of the watch buyer market who simply want to just buy a watch that they can actually obtain. Sure, there's things like pricing concerns, and some watches are just going to be ultra desirable if they don't have a high production rate on them. But the experience that many collectors I hear tell me is that they walk into a Patek Philippe boutique, there are some things on the shelf, they can't buy them, they got to wait. Patek Philippe boutiques have to wait potentially for another watch to come in before they can sell that watch, and they have all these lists and things like that. It's almost like what you saw with Rolex authorized dealers, but on steroids, because that's where Patek Philippe sees themselves, and that's where they position themselves in the market as we are the best. And so many collectors get a little bit frustrated. Maybe they save up, maybe a Calatrava or anything else, and they just can't get the watch that they are seeking. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily the worst thing in the world because their watches are coveted. There are probably going to be shortages on high in-demand items and watches, especially if a brand is recognized as being the best. We have to step back for a second and think, are they really making the best watches? And if so, who is putting a stamp of approval as an authority on the watches? Now, it's not the Geneva Seal, and I'm here to tell you that there are many watch brands out there that offer as much, if not more, utility value, but also sometimes value just from the quality of the components and the watchmaking. You know, let's say 50 years ago, you could easily say Patek Philippe is the absolute best watchmaker. But today, when watches are much bigger concern, more people are buying, selling, trading, collecting watches, they're interested in them. There are so many more manufacturers and brands that are stepping up to try to take a piece of the market, and they're doing so by offering quality and value at lower price points. And so to say today that Patek Philippe is the best is just not accurate. It could be an opinion, but to actually look at it from a standpoint without any kind of bias related to social signaling is just not accurate. Any watchmaker or brand can polish the undersides of their screws. Any watchmaker or brand can keep cost certification. Any watchmaker or brand can use the best components in the market to produce their watches should they choose. And you see it in micro brands, you see it in high-end independents, and so much more. As long as you have the talent, the quality watchmakers that can do this, there should be no problem in producing it because with modern-day machining, it's just not as difficult of a task. So I think we're at a point today with Patek Philippe where they could have gone two different ways. And you see this with all watch brands. They can either give the market and the collectors what they want in an effort to attract them and sell more watches, which is what companies do to exist and move forward. Or if you tout yourself as being the best or having this level of prestige, you can just produce watches that you want to produce, that you think your brand should have, and then force them on the market because you're the best. And if you think you're the best, you should buy this because it's the best. And that's what we see happening here today with Patek Philippe, in my opinion, is you walk in and it's almost like the interview process starts for a buyer of whether or not the brand or company thinks that you should be entitled to potentially even think or talk about purchasing one of their watches. Now, you can go in the aftermarket, you can pick these things up, gray market. Some of them you'll have to pay a premium on. Don't get me wrong, you could obtain the watches. But there's two types of collectors now to meet these two different strategies of the brands, where it's like, do you care more about the signaling of status? And yes, I made it through and I was able to prevail and buy this watch because they screened me, and this is a social proofing strategy of I have the social proof, I've got the Patek Philippe on my wrist, look at me, I made it through, I must be someone. Or are you the buyer or collector that wants to just buy something that you love and enjoy, and it could still be high quality, and it could still be expensive, and it could still be potentially even higher quality than the Patek Philippe watches, but you don't care as much about the social signaling aspect of it all. And for me personally, I don't really care much about that. When someone comes up to me and starts talking, oh, Richard Mille, Patek Philippe, yada, yada, oftentimes these are just buzzwords or brands that they heard someone in a social circle say, and they're like, well, this must be the thing. And of course, that's something that happens in the world with humans, but it doesn't have to be that way for you as an individual or collector. So I always say, buy what you're going to wear and enjoy. If you look at the watches as investments, oftentimes it doesn't work well. There'll be people that say, oh, well, if you buy a Rolex, you'll never lose. Not true. Plenty of Rolex models exist today that you can buy at retail, walk out the door, and immediately take a hit on. Immediately take a massive loss on the watch you bought just because you thought that a Rolex watch could stand the test of time. Because what? You heard it somewhere. You saw it on the Watch You Seek forums. Your friend, your wife's boyfriend told you that you should get a Patek Philippe watch, right? And so I'm not here to say that Patek Philippe watches are bad. They make phenomenal quality watches. More so just to show the two tracks a brand can make, who they're positioning the brand and watches for, and why, depending on the type of person that you are, it might make sense to look at alternatives, right? You could easily just slap an H. Moser on your wrist in precious metal, pay a fraction of the price, still have a quality all-in-house watch for a fraction of the price. You can do that and still be happy and enjoy it if that's the watch that you like. But I think as time goes on and you see it in the trends, less people care about the prestige or the historical prestige aspect of things in general, and it's not just watches. You see this with certain prestigious schools that exist. You see this with places that people live. You see this even sometimes with cars that people drive. Sure, people still do care about prestige in a way, but saying Rolls-Royce today or Bentley today is not like saying Rolls-Royce or Bentley 60 years ago. It's much different. Saying a Jaguar car today is much different than saying a Jaguar car 70 years ago. Things change, ideas, concepts, ways that people think change, and as the West and the United States becomes more casual and cares less about how everyone else thinks they should live and more about how they personally would like to live and enjoy their life and the things that they spend the time, money, energy, and resources on, I think we'll see either the brands like Patek Philippe will have to adapt, which might be what they're doing with the Cubitus. Time will tell if they do release this watch. But we'll see this with watch brands in general, and we see it happening today. You got brands like Omega that listen to the collectors and give them cool things. And even Rolex in recent times has come out with some kind of odd, in my opinion, dial combination like the puzzle piece dial, or even the date that doesn't tell the day or the date. So even Rolex is kind of dabbling in this space. Time will tell, but I think that for the time being, if you want a watch that is quality, high quality, still has recognizability within the watch collector community, and you still love and enjoy it, there are plenty of other options besides Patek Philippe. But if you like a Patek Philippe, it's a Patek Philippe. So the choice is yours at the end of the day. Please feel free to leave in the comments below your thoughts, ideas, and opinions on this. I'd love to see it and hear it. And we'll see you next time. You've been chatting with John P.